Hello and welcome to Curzon Living Room, a season of live Q&A events on Curzon Home Cinema. My name's Hannah Flint, I'm a film critic and I'm the co-chair of Time's Up UK Critics Committee. And tonight I'm in conversation about Simple Passion with writer and director Danielle Arbid. But we're doing something a little bit different tonight. Joining us, we have a panel of experts to discuss the film, the themes of sexual pleasure and sex positivity. I'll introduce them a little bit later as we go around the virtual table. But first, if you're watching us live, we're taking your questions via comment on YouTube live chat, or you can tweet us on Twitter using the hashtag Simple Passion. So let's get this started. Danielle Arbid, thank you so much for being here. Let's talk about the adaptation process. Annie Ernaux's novels is quite short and slim. What freedom restrictions did that offer you while presenting this sexual story on screen? Oh, I think you're on mute. There we go.
Do you hear me?
Yes, I hear you. I have technical issues. It's a Zoom.
Okay. So I was saying hello. Thank you. When I decided to adapt the book, I wanted a book about falling in love. And when I say falling in love, it means that there's sex in it. It's just not only a story without a concrete relationship. And falling passionately in love. So I tried to search for a book because I had the producer that posed to me to adapt a book of my choice because he thought that I film very well the sex, the bodies. And he choose a book and I'll buy it and can adapt it. So in the literature, I'm living in France and I searched mostly in the French literature. You have only just books. I didn't find a book with love, passion, and sex. There's lots of books very interesting about sex, experimenting things. And there's lots of books about love, as if love, there's no, is very noble and there's no sex in it. Or there are other ideas in these books like separation or adultery. I don't know how you say it in English. So it was very hard for me to find the book with this idea of passion and only a pure relationship. I found it in Annie Ernaux's book Passion Simple. But the sex scenes, I created them because she used ellipse. She would say in the book, he arrives, and then the next day I'm waiting for him. But we never know what happens in the room. She would say things like, I don't know, precise things about longing, but not really about how sexually it was between them. She wrote another book 10 years after that is called Se perdre, losing yourself or losing oneself. And it's all the sexual details of Passion Simple. It's in this book. But I didn't use it. I created. I don't know if I answered your question.
Well, no, it did, because I think, you were able to fill in the gaps because it is like 60 pages. There's nothing there at all. So you were able to really expand it and create, I suppose, your own story, but using this as a kind of the groundwork. I think one of the things, it's been received very well, and a lot of people talk about, especially when it comes to sexual pleasure, female sexual pleasure, is that when it's a female director, it's the female gaze. And I wonder how would you define that, especially when it comes to sex scenes? Because obviously we all know about the male gaze, but what do you think defines a female filmmaker, a female gaze, telling this sort of story and exploring that, the sensuality on screen?
To be honest, I never thought of a female gaze. I'm an independent woman and I don't oblige myself to think that way or that way. It was naturally that I did it. And when I wrote the scenario, the script, it was before the Me Too movement and all the or what happened afterwards. So I never thought I'm gonna, I think I think a man would have maybe filmed it the same way. I don't know. I hope. I think in cinema there's no a female. I'm sorry to go against what's happening now, but the idea of a woman's eyes or a man's eyes. I don't believe in that. I believe, yes, when you film in a beautiful, film in a vulgar way, but you can. It's not. I don't think it's about sex. I hope.
But it's the sexual gaze.
The female gaze is about this woman living this experience. It's from her point of view. It's not from his point of view. He doesn't exist. He's like God, actually. He doesn't. She makes him, she makes him God in one way. She fantasizes him. So he doesn't exist. So I said to Sergei, you don't have to play nothing concrete. You don't exist, actually. You're just an image of her, and even when you're here, you don't really exist. Because when we fall in love, we fantasize, the people don't really, they are not what they are, who they are. So, but maybe to tell you just a small thing, when I did a film that's called Un homme perdu in 2007, and there was lots of sex scenes in it, A Lost Man. And when I presented it in MoMA in New York, the person wanted to present me after the film. And when they saw that I was a woman, I'm a woman, the people were astonished, because she wanted to play with the idea of who directed the film. Is it a woman or a man? And so they didn't expect a woman, actually, because it's a story about two men having experiences in voila.
See, that's what we want. We want everyone to be confused, and anyone can direct anything. But I think you're right, male, female, maybe it's more of a sexual gaze that we're kind of exploring. I want to open this up, so I'm going to go to Sarah Sloan, who presents the podcast series 12, honouring women's sexuality, and it explores the 12 different ways women are able to orgasm. I think I know 3. So tell me more about that afterwards. I want to know the rest. So tell me, what was your impression of the film, especially in the way it presents female pleasure?
Hi, Danielle, I just thought it was wonderful. And, thank you so much, because from my point of view, it wasn't so much a female gaze per se, but it just really resonated with me. And I think the reason it did was because I love the way that you really focused on the connection between the two of them. So it didn't feel like what my mum would call humping. There's so much pornography and so much sex that's in like mainstream TV, to me would be like just humping. And I just thought it was so beautiful, the way that you did these close-ups on the flesh together. And the breathing, for me, like the sound of it was so erotic, and the movement as well. I just found it I found it a real turn on. But I've been in lockdown for a long time, and I just thought it was wonderful. And I liked her. I really could relate to her on lots of different levels. It wasn't just the fact that I was seeing great sex on scene from my perspective. It was also because I liked her as a character. I liked that what she stood for, and that she was a mother as well. I really appreciated that too, because to have hot sex and for that to come in the form of a parent, is I can't think of another time that I've experienced that. So yeah, I loved it.
Well, I'm going to go to a comedian and preacher of self-confidence, body acceptance, and sex positivity, Kyla Kopler. Hello. So the film has been described as boosting the sexual positivity conversation. I definitely think that's right. But what how do we define sex positivity, and how do you think Simple Passion is a really good example of and explores it?
I just think it shows all of it, the ins and outs of sex, and how, as primitive as it is, how complex it can be, you know, and how, like, I feel like with Simple Passion, by the way, it was fantastic, Danielle, it was so good. I feel like with Simple Passion, it was just so, as Sarah said, it was such a turn on, it was so sexual, and you're so there in those moments. And then to see this, she was a writer and a mother, to have those moments of just being lost and just not understanding, of being like, I've been there and I've crawled back up and I went back down, and I'm sure I'll be there again. I have no doubt I'll be there again with someone. But I think it was just that. I think it was just the realness of it. The absolute, and I love the fact that he wasn't, like, we know nothing about him. You know, I think it was just so good that it was a lot about her, and just from her side of it, you know. I just thought it was great. I just thought it was really positive in that sense. And her pleasure, just to see her, the pleasure of it all, you know.
No, exactly. Danielle, did you want to respond? You look like you want to say something.
Yeah, I want to say thank you. I don't know when I make a film, if people receive it, I don't think about that. So afterwards, when the film is finished, I'm very obsessed about, do people understand? Do they feel what is it, you know? And I'm very happy when I hear you saying that you related to the film, because for me, going to the cinema, seeing movies, unfortunately today on internet, but anyway, seeing movies is relate from trying to communicate with the film, seeing myself in the film. So for me, Passion Simple is a film about it speaks to people who fell in love passionately, or to people who would love to fall in love, who dream to fall in love. But it doesn't speak to people who try to intellectualize, the things, For me, they cannot understand. I think this film is just reminds you of what you lived. I hope.
Yeah.
This is only what I want to communicate through this film.
Yeah.
I want you to sit and to remember yourself, or to project yourself. And this is what,
the idea, it's that idea of love.
Why I want to, yes.
Unreal. Let me bring Kathy Camera in. She's known on Instagram and Patreon as That Single Mum. She writes honestly about dating, single parenting, disability justice, with a healthy dose of sarcasm. Love to hear it. Kathy, so Sarah kind of touched on this a little bit, but how do you feel about the film, especially with Hélène? Because what's so interesting is that conflict of her womanhood and her sexuality and desires and her motherhood. And I wondered if you could tell me a bit about how you think that that's kind of explored, and that conflict representing the kind of real conflict that a lot of women who are also mothers deal with on the daily.
Yeah, hi, and thank you for inviting me to this conversation. Danielle, I love the film as well. As Kyla was saying, I through so much of that film, I was kind of glued to it, because I felt like I was watching myself in various past scenes of my life. And it played out just so exactly similar to experiences I had in ways that no other film has done when talking about sex and romance for single mothers, which is amazing. And I think in terms of like the single mother thing, like I think it's great, as Sarah said, that you've got that element in the film, and that the boy's slightly older and she's slightly older as well. So it's not just about like, I don't know, a young hot single mom of a young baby. It's about a late 30s woman who's got an older son, and she's dealing with that parenting, trying to deal with parenting while also being completely head over heels with this guy. And it's so realistically done, because I've been there where I've been thinking about a man and like dinner for my kids, or thinking about his texting and playing a game with them. Like I've been in all those situations. So it was really, really kind of, I don't know, affirming maybe to see. It was really good, really good. And I think really realistic to a lot of situations.
Absolutely. So last but not least on our panel, we have Lucy Litwack, is the owner of luxury lingerie brand Coco de Mer. Thank you so much for joining us. Obviously tell us what you think about the film, but one thing I really loved is the kind of the ritual of getting ready for, you know, sexual encounter. A lot of women to make themselves feel confident in their appearance. And I want to know what you think about that, especially, you know, as Coco de Mer is part of that ritual for many women.
Yeah, hi. Yes, I mean, I also love the film, Danielle. I think that's a kind of resounding success on this panel. But for me, I think what it really highlighted, I think, in the film was just how it was such a juxtaposition of sort of humiliating yet empowering, and sort of pleasure and pain and all of that we talk about so much in sort of the industry that I work in and everything. But it's kind of, you know, it was exciting, but it's all consuming. And I think that, you know, really felt that, you know, it completely took over life. And it's exciting, but with the excitement, there's that lack of security. And it's like that constant dichotomy between all of these different feelings, which, you know, on their own kind of humiliation and lack of security could be really unpleasurable, but you're sort of seeing it in this view where you're also how all consuming great sex can be, right? And just, you know, however much other elements of it may not be, you know, what you really want them to be. And so I found that was really nice. And I actually read a review where someone called it exquisite torture. And I thought that was such a good expression, because it did feel like that. There was elements of it. And because I have been there, so I think I was relating to it on a very personal level, but it was just like, it's torture. But yeah, I remember like the highs as well as the lows. So I think all of that felt real. And I think from my point of view, there is a female gaze element to that. You know, because I do a lot of photography of women in lingerie, I'm thinking about that quite a lot. And I do feel like there is a difference between a female photographer shooting women not wearing very many clothes and a male version of that. And I think sometimes a lot of it's not even just the end result, it's just the experience of the shoot itself, or the confidence that it gives to women in an all-female shoot, for instance, because it's just suddenly there's less of that competition, or automatically less of a worry about how you feel or how you look or what you can do or say. And so it seems to feel more intimate and more sensual. And I think, you know, that's very much how I felt about the film. It had that intimacy and it had that sensuality, which personally I do think women are, you know, very good at portraying, and that because, you know, you feel that more. But yes, I think all of those elements of, you know, her finding out he's coming over and rushing to kind of get ready and choose a different outfit, and, you know, you've got literally minutes, but you're still deciding between 4 different shirts, and all of those little, like, it just felt like there were so many personal elements that you can relate to, even if, you know, half the time you're sort of embarrassed by it. Do you know what I mean? Because it's sort of like you don't really want to tell people that. But I thought what was interesting was how open she was, how she would say to her friend, you know, no, I'm not willing to commit to dinner because he may call me. And I feel like I'm not sure we're normally quite as open. You know, you sort of don't want to admit that you're literally putting your life on hold on the, even though we all do it, on the off chance, you know. So I think that honesty made it really raw as well. But yes, I think it does show, you know, all of the extra, I think, work in a way that women put into relationship. Because at the end of the day, he was having great sex too. You know, he talks about how it's such amazing sex, but it also feels like quite a lot easier for him in that same way. So they're both getting that pleasure, but you know, you feel like she's putting, or it's affecting her life a lot more. But just being able to see all that on screen, I think is amazing, because it's just, you know, I feel like culture or just the fact that male pleasure is just so normalized, right? You know, if you think, I don't know, whole film franchises of, you know, American Pie or whatever being based on basically male masturbation, whereas, you know, a female masturbating on screen is like newsworthy, right? So I think, you know, it's great to see how that's starting to change. And you're sort of, because I feel like generally we're seeing this like change in female stories becoming more prevalent in culture, but it still feels like female pleasure is kind of almost like the last taboo, right? It's like it's not discussed as much as anything else. So, you know, it's great when it is, and you can, you know, see that so clearly on screen.
Yeah, well, let me bring it back to Danielle, because I think Lucy brought up a lot of really interesting things there that I wanted to actually see if Danielle will kind of give her opinion on, because I think what you said about women, female sets and a female-led set, and what that brings, making that a safer space to conduct things that are quite intimate and can be uncomfortable. So for you, you know, like you've said, you know, the fact that your producer was like, we think you should do, you know how to do sex, because you have your back catalogue is, there's lots of sex in your back catalogue. So obviously you've had a lot of experience in this. So what do you think, you know, for you, especially in this day and age, how I suppose the industry might have changed to actually make shooting sex scenes far more comfortable for the actors, especially, because we're hearing about intimacy coordinators, and just like how you kind of want to create that safe space on set so everyone feels, you know, because everyone's putting the whole self on show, and you know, that's quite a brave, courageous, both for men and women to do on screen.
Thank you, because I've heard lots of great things you said. Thank you. There are lots of things about feminism, and about women shooting sex, and about a woman telling this story that I adapted, but Annie Ernaux told it before me in the book. What I found after I'll tell you how I shot the scenes and why I like to shoot sex scenes. But what I liked, why I chose the book, it's because of her courage. I found this woman very courageous to say loud that she loved passionately a man, or it could have been a woman. She could have been homosexual and telling the same story. It's not about a man, but how she put aside her, you know, her proud, sa fierté, we say in French, and she would say things like, you know, I forgot myself, I forgot my life, I forgot my sons, because in the book she has 2 sons. So no, I found it very courageous, and I found what is feminism today for me, it's to say loud that our weaknesses. This is for me feminism, is to be able to say loud our weaknesses. It's not to just be strong and show everybody you're strong. It's not about showing. I had enough about showing, you know. I would like women to be themselves. This is what I would like. I would like filming women as they, you know, not being afraid of anything. As for the sex scene, how I shoot sex, I like to shoot them. For me, it's very easy when I find the good actors, because cinema, you know, is a team. For me, it's like shooting, dancing, actually. It's not like shooting porno or something like this. I watch porn films. I watch, but I'm not interested of copying that. For me, when I shoot a sex scene, I find my references into paintings, in museums, in sculpture, in photography, in dancing, in contemporary dancing. for me, this is what I try to find the grace, of the moment. And each scene says something about their relationship. The first at the beginning of the film is just, very interesting sex, but it for me, the first scene, she didn't fall in love yet. She will fall in love. It will come. And the last one in the film, she wouldn't care about sex. It's just, having him in her arms. This is what's important. It's not about sex anymore. So it's how you feel, at one moment you wouldn't care. It's not sex. It doesn't exist anymore, sex. So for me, it tells the story. Filming these scenes is telling what's going on in the movie. And so I don't know. It's natural for me to my next film, there won't be scenes in it because I don't want to every time do the same film. But but it's I like to film. For me, it's filming grace. I try to find grace in these scenes.
So let's open it up a bit wider to everyone, but I'll go to Sarah, I'll go to you first, but for everyone else feel free to jump in. But Lucy touched on this as well. You talked about taboo. This is kind of erotic cinema. Why do we think that it's 2021 and even a film like this might actually have people kind of quite I suppose kind of intimidated by the subject or intimidated about seeing such open and honest expressions of female pleasure?
Yeah, and I was quite interested because some of the critics were like, oh, it was a bit sort of, showing casual lack of concern about so much sex. And I was like, no, loved it. Really, really enjoyed the casual lack of concern about this sex because it felt like it was talking to me. I think it's history. Like, you just have to look at history. And I think you can go all the way back to ancient history and look at the Greeks and the Romans. And then you can come through like the witch hunts, and then you sit firmly in the Victorians. And it just is a hangover basically from the Victorian England, where we had this kind of ideal sense of what a woman was. And she definitely was a virgin and didn't even want sex. And there's this like really intense control that comes in the Victorians, helped with Freud coming up with various crazy kind of ideas. And also, this kind of concept of midwifery going out of the world of the women and coming in with medicalization. So it's a hangover. It's a real hangover from that very kind of intensely uptight period in English history. And unfortunately, it wasn't just the UK that it affected a lot of other countries because of colonialization. So, we've got a lot to answer for in that regard. But that I think is why it is, such a, kind of hoo-ha so many generations later. And then you get the sort of various waves of feminism, which did sort of various degrees of good to either reinforce that or try and smash through it. But suffice to say that, yeah, it is kind of brain numbing, really, that in, this 2021, it's still a big kind of fuss. I find it rather boring and exhausting. It's like, come on, let's just talk about it. This stuff is so fun and liberating and free,
I think as feminists too, we just have like bigger fish to fry at this point. You know what I mean? I'm like, really, do we have to go on? But in saying that, I think that even when we were talking about it, we were like, well, I was kind of turned on, and well, and it's still us, we still have, it's very, because it is very intimate and it's something private, you know what I mean? In some sense of the word. And what I find as well, because we're English and Irish, and I know this sounds silly, but because the weather, we don't see body. We don't see nudity, like we just don't, and for us even to see, like you walk down the street in Ireland with no brown and you see nipples, and people are like, oh, it's an absolute shock, first. And I think some people who watch Simply Passion, I think it's just a foreign thing to them, but it's so enjoyable. And I think everyone can agree on that. You watch it and you have these primitive instinct, and being turned on is an exceptional emotion. Why not? You know what I mean? Like, I absolutely think it was great. Like, but I think the reason it is a very, very powerful thing It's a very powerful thing. And I think it really breaks the norms of what motherhood is, of what success is, of what feminism is in some way, because as Danielle pointed out, this thing of like being strong and I'm a feminist and I can do everything on my own, but lean into your femininity, lean into what you are, which is a little bit softer, you know. And I think what I saw with Helena in the movie was that, and that's all of us on this panel were like, yeah, me too, yeah, same, yeah, I went there, I was there, I was exactly, we've all done it with like, now it was no Russian diplomat, you know, it was some surfer from a shack in Australia.
Speak for yourself.
You know, like, no.
I also think, you know, one thing it's creating, it's engaging with this kind of societal shift of like age gap relationships, which usually is just like older guy, younger girl, and we're seeing far more. And I suppose, do you think that like we're seeing, you know, I love that. And also, I mean, I know she's like 40 plus, but she looks, I'm 32, I thought she was my age, she looks amazing. But you know, having, I suppose, seeing that on screen, it feels a bit more realistic. Did you guys really enjoy, like Lucy, did you find that quite, I suppose, refreshing to see?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably the same as all the other elements we talked about. It's just like another element that's potentially breaking what used to be thought of as a, you know, more of a taboo, or you know, just something. And it was that, you know, men would aspire to be with younger women. But I actually do think that is something that has changed a lot. I mean, even if I think I'm 46, and if I'm on a dating app, everyone that comes in is like 20. And they're always like, are you interested in younger boys? Like, it's like the first question. And you're sort of, you know,
you're like, yes, I am actually.
It's a bad thing, but it's
funny you should ask.
You sort of think, you know. But I do find that, though, despite that, they always add in that, you look really young for your age, or something around that kind of comment. It was like, are you really 46 or whatever? And you're just like, is that your chat up line? Like, you know, you don't have many wrinkles in your picture because 46 is really old. But, you know, we think it's sort of, but I just think it's interesting. So I do think that is something you're kind of going to see more of as well, I think, in culture generally, that it isn't sort of the taboo. It's almost going back to like the whole Mrs. Robinson thing, when it was kind of sexy taboo back in the day, and then it sort of lost it, and suddenly it became, you know, men were silver foxes and women were just cougars who just like, you know, like usual, it's like the whole slut versus stud thing, right? It was just a sort of another version of that. So I think that's all great. And on the flip side, as you were talking about, you know, that ritual of, you know, a woman getting ready to see a guy and stuff, and how that is empowering, you know. And I often get asked that question about wearing, you know, sexy lingerie or something. It's like, oh, but you know, you only wear it for a man. And it's like, actually, I don't know anyone really. It's like very much yourself, even if you want a partner or whatever to see it, and that's great too. But it's making you feel good about yourself, whether you're with a partner or not, right? It feels sexy, or people say, you know, I'll wear it under my clothes, no one else can see it, but I know, you know, I'm going to go for a job interview and I'm going to wear really great underwear because it's going to give me confidence to sell myself or, you know, make a good impression. And that's just because, you know, it's your own feelings. No one else needs to see that. And that's quite powerful, you know, whatever you can do to make yourself, you know, feel great for you. So,
I have to say, I did appreciate the line, Danielle, where he's telling her, you shouldn't wear that skirt. And said you look like a slut. She's like something like, I have a healthy respect for sluts. And I was like, yes, me too. It was I love that line.
It's such a great line. But it does as well that even in those situations, you know, the man always has to have that control, even though he's basically in control of so much. But still, it's like, I've got a wife, but you really shouldn't go out in that skirt. And you're just like, really?
Minor.
Exertion.
I wanted to, you know, I think Danielle, definitely with your body of work, you've explored so many different types of relationship. But I think one thing you can say about this film is that it's, you know, this is a straight, white, able-bodied couple, which is quite commonplace. It's a couple that we've seen. I wonder, you know, I suppose we'll bring it in, but also Kathy, I'd love to have your point of view on this, because is there, you know, what can we be doing as, I suppose, the film industry and filmmakers, I suppose, to create space more diverse stories that can explore, because I think, you know, this film is relatable, but also having these different perspectives and showing different sorts of sexual experiences that aren't, you know, just this one factory setting. So I suppose, Danielle, I'll go to you, and then Kathy, I'd love you getting on this one as well.
Sorry, I lost half of the question. If you could just resume it.
Yeah, I was talking about, you know, the film presenting a quite common coupling with a straight white able-bodied couple. We see that quite a lot on screen. Obviously, this is an amazing representation. But what do you think, you know, someone who's making films and who's actually, you've explored very diverse ranges of love prior to this, but how do you think filmmakers and the film industry need to be pursuing avenues far more frequently to make films, or do you think there's still making more diverse perspectives on the kind of sexual experience? More diverse perspective on sexual experiences, but yeah, basically that. Sorry.
I lost half of it.
Let me go to sorry, might have got a bit of similar. Kathy, can I come to you? So yeah, I did you hear that question?
Yeah.
Okay,
No,
can I feel like I can't do it.
No, I mean, as I was saying when we were speaking earlier, like I could relate to the main female character in that movie because I've been her. But as you're pointing out in this question, I've been her, but I've also been something more. So I've been the female, I've been the white woman, but I've also been a disabled person in an able-bodied situation, or with an able-bodied man. And that kind of things like the underlying narrative of misogyny and power and control, they all play out slightly differently when you have another marginalization on top of your whiteness and on top of your womanhood, femininity. So yeah, like I think this film is absolutely brilliant and I love it and I really relate to the character. And I think, as Lucy was saying, like it's great to have these refreshing perspectives, like the older woman and the younger guy, and someone who's a mum, and things like that. And I think, you know, it's just another step in the right direction of seeing films where we are going to see more diversity in casting, because this film is breaking down lots of taboos as well. And I think, you know, yeah. It's a really positive step in that direction. That answers your question.
No, definitely. I think, you know, guys, you know, this film is just a stepping stone to what else could come. It feels like it's like, you know, a gateway for more stories to be told. What are you looking for? What do you want to see next, I suppose? What would you love? So maybe Kyla, let me come to you. What do you want to see next for sexual pleasure for women?
I just think, and I know, like, there's, as I said, I know, and Kathy, well said, that was so interesting, your point of view, I love that. But I think, I don't know, I just think I would love if we were ready for it. I would love if I could, I would love to say, yeah, let's get LGBT, let's get trans, but I think there's just such a fear surrounding it, and I think there's a real stigma attached to it. So personally, I would love, like, I'm like the bigger the better. Like I think that freedom and just like go for it, go nuts, absolutely. But I think it would just take time. I think it will take a lot of time, and I think it's just wee stepping stones, you know what I mean? But I'd love to see. I mean, now, like, I think with some TV series, we are getting a little bit about diversity and a little bit of something else. But I mean, it's not really. I mean, do you think, Hannah, yourself as a film critic, like, have you seen anything that's been like targeted towards a different minority or anything? Like, I don't know.
I mean, look, I wrote recently about the prevalence of lesbian period dramas, but pretty much all of them are white women. So I was kind of and it's going back to Sarah, your point actually is about how the taboo and the colonization of this. And actually, you know, we look at the past, and we're not talking about the women of color, especially, who were far more sexually free until, you know, colonization happened, suddenly enforced it. So yeah, I mean, Sarah, you know, I'm just sure you kind of champion for more of these sort of stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's also about making space for the industries. So it's about, you know, the fact that Indian film is and how it would be brilliant if it could, you know, if we could absorb more of that in our culture, but then that itself needs to evolve. But that history is a result of our impact, right? So as you so rightly say, before it was before we came along, basically India was just stunningly beautiful in the way that it had its sexuality, how it celebrated its sexuality, in complex, it's not all of it, but you know, anyway, but the point being that I think it's about making space for other cultures for their industries to thrive, so that we get Nigerian stories, that we get a Nigerian film industry, that it's coming up from the grassroots, as well as making space within what is the, you know, the engine of Hollywood, and the engine of Western filmmaking. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, absolutely.
I think it definitely will come though, like 100%. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you think about it, lads, 150 years ago we couldn't open bank accounts. Now we're writing on the screen. We're showing them how it's done. Like, that's empowering for me. Like, that's really empowering. I think it's class. Really cool.
Danielle, you're working something that's not sex, but is that, you know, I know you said you kind of don't want to do sex scenes for your next project. I get that. You've probably seen enough, but, you know, is there something that you know, are you still excited about this kind of erotic that we're seeing in cinema? Is something that you still want to kind of make sure it's still a part of your filmography?
No, there will be one sex scene actually in the film.
You just can't resist.
But it's more the project, you know, and I think there will be more and more films with sex scenes. It depends how you shoot them, you know. It's not easy to shoot them, because for me, it's a director shouldn't be a voyeur or look at the actors doing it. It's very simple. Because if he looks at them, or if the director if I look at the actors, if I don't feel what they are doing and understand the motivation of the scene, the audience will be looking at them. I don't know how to explain this. For me, when I direct the scene, I just imagine myself in it. If I find myself watching them, I cut immediately. This means that the scene is not good. If I forget myself, because I'm the first one to watch, I'm the first audience. If I forget myself, so this means it's good. If I see myself, this means that I have to precise to the actors, or tell them, or assure them, or do something, or change the camera from this place to this place, change something to feel that the scene is good. But every film is interesting to, you know, there is sensuality even where you have clothes. This is what I want to say. It's not because it doesn't mean you're voila. As for this film, I think there will be much more films with sex, actually, because I think the COVID crisis made us feel that we need each other.
Yes, agreed.
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 People touching. I think we're aware of this now, much more than before. And I think also the American the film industry made films all from the 2000 till now. The films were like no sex in them. You know, when you have a sex scene, they have sex during like 30 seconds, and the woman wears a bra. The bra thing in each thing, I never understood. No, she's always having the bra in the sex scene. So, you know, these kind of things that are not logic and very conservative point of view, and very also a man's point of view on women. I think if you respect and you feel, you know, if you don't look at, you don't have to put a bra or things like this. I don't know, but I think it will change actually, because the film was in Cannes, and the people of Cannes told me it was one rare film with sexuality. There's no film with sex in the whole selection, in the whole, because they saw like 1,000 films, then very, very few films showing sex. But I think it will change after this crisis. I hope.
I think we all on this panel hope that for that very, very much. Thank you, everyone. I'm so sad we've got to wrap up now. I'm sure we could all chatter on for ages. Maybe we should afterwards. Sorry, viewers at home. But we have to wrap up. I want to do I've got a load of thank yous, so let me get those out of the way. I want to thank Coco de Mer for making tonight's event possible. And most of all, thank you to our wonderful guests. We've got Danielle Arbid, Sarah Sloan, Kyla Cobbler, Kathy Kamara, and Lucy Litwack. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Simple Passion. Yay! We've all seen Simple Passion. Some of you might have seen it, but you can still watch it. It's available now to stream on Curzon Home Cinema. If you enjoyed the film and this event, please tell all your friends, tweet about it. You can tweet us. You can follow Curzon Cinemas on Twitter and Facebook for the latest updates. Upcoming in the Curzon living room, we have on Tuesday, 16th February, director Charlene Favia and Noé Abita, who will talk about the recent collaboration, Slalom, and I'm going to be hosting that as well. So thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining us, and have a wonderful evening.